Wrestling with Shadows.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're here to talk about the 1998 wrestling documentary Hitman Hart, Wrestling in Shadows. And we're also here today to talk about its new Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome. But before we dive into all that, if you are a fan of movie reviews, 4K Blu-ray reviews, some tech and game reviews along the way, then this is the channel for you, and nothing would help this channel out more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So Wrestling in Shadows is a 1998 documentary directed by Paul J, and it tells the story of Bret Hart's last year with the World Wrestling Federation, now World Wrestling Entertainment, and everything that led up to him leaving the company and into one of the most famous moments in wrestling history, the Montreal Screwjob. So the Montreal Screwjob, I think, is probably top 3 most famous wrestling moments ever. I think it's right up there with Hulk Hogan slamming Andre at WrestleMania 3, Hulk Hogan dropping the big leg on Randy Savage at Bash at the Beach, turning on the fans and joining the NWL, and then right up there with them, and probably the most famous in my opinion, the Montreal Screwjob. And it's incredible that they got this entire last year and all this drama caught on film. They just happen to be making a documentary about Bret Hart, his life, his father Stu Hart, and all through this it takes place probably through the most crazy time to be a wrestling fan. I was a wrestling fan in 1997. I didn't start watching wrestling until 1998. I was always a WWF guy though. So when I started watching, Bret was with WCW already, but when you find out everything that happened that led him to going to WCW, it is just an incredible story, and he tells his whole side of the story. But this documentary, you know, it tells one side of a divorce. We only hear from Bret's side of things. We never really hear from Vince's side of things. Of course, you know, Vince does own WWE, and he got to tell his story many times over. I've probably heard his side way more than I've heard Bret's side. This isn't my first time checking this documentary out, though. Actually, I've seen this quite a few times, and I think it's one of the best documentaries probably ever, given I'm a big fan of the subject matter. I'm a big fan of Bret Hart. Not the biggest fan, I'll be honest with you guys. Bret Hart was never in my top 5 favorite wrestlers. I'm a big Undertaker and Shawn Michaels guy, so those were always my top 2, and it's always funny because you were either on Bret's side or you're on Shawn's side, and looking back on it, I can only look at it from the wrestling side, and I was always more of a Shawn Michaels guy. He had more flair to him, but Bret Hart is the excellence of execution. There's one thing you can always say about Bret Hart: he puts on the cleanest looking matches with almost no botches. And when watching this documentary, listening to him talk, you kind of get an understanding of why that is. Like, he looks at wrestling as an art. You know, the big thing for him is not to hurt anybody. You know, make everything look as real and clean as possible. Put on these incredible matches, and I think he nailed that. My biggest flaw with Bret Hart was always that he just never cut the best promos. But when you look at it, he did look at the Hitman as a character, and the way he portrayed him, he wanted him to be this super clean babyface. And up until 1997, that's what he was. And Vince McMahon didn't want him to jump ship to WCW. They offered him $9 million, WCW, over 3 years at the time. It's a lot of money in the wrestling business especially. Vince's company was struggling, but he wanted to show his loyalty to Bret, and Bret, loyalty meant more than money. He just wanted to stay with Vince, and all he wanted to do was just get a pretty decent offer, and Vince wanted to lock him down. At the time, he was the top star, and gave him a 20-year deal, and for him, that commitment was worth more than the money. The problem is, a couple months later, Stone Cold Steve Austin starts to rise up, and Bret Hart starts to fall down the card, and he doesn't have the drawing power that he did. And now this is where I kind of lean towards Bret, because Bret Hart is kind of right in this scenario where it's like, you know, we signed a contract. I was committed to you, you committed to me, and now you want to back out. And he didn't even want to offer him any deal. Really, Vince just wanted out of this completely, said, just, I want you out of here, you know, I don't see a future for the Hitman in WWF. That's sad. Like, I completely can relate to Bret to that when a company decides, you know, it's a business decision, yes, but you're playing with people's lives. And Bret Hart has been loyal to you for 14 years, and you're willing to turn your back on him because Stone Cold is what's going to save your business. Like, you can't find anywhere to put the Hitman. I mean, I guess not, because when Bret went to WCW, they fumbled the ball hard. I mean, think about it. In 1997, the Montreal Screwjob happens, and then Bret goes to WCW, and WCW has their biggest pay-per-view at the time, Starrcade, and Bret should be on top of the world, because the irony of this whole thing is they couldn't figure out a way to get the belt off of Bret and onto Shawn. They had this whole struggle because Bret didn't want to drop it in Montreal, his home country. You know, he's popular in Canada, and he doesn't want to drop it to a man he believes in his heart of hearts is just a bad person. And Shawn Michaels, I think at the time, would tell you he was a pretty bad person, so he doesn't want to do that in front of his fans and, like, you know, betray his fans and betray his character. Given it's Vince McMahon's company, he's your boss, he tells you what to do, you do it. And that's kind of the real push and pull, and that's really the center of this argument. But the irony of this whole thing is they booked the greatest ending in probably pay-per-view history with Survivor Series 1997. You'll see the ending of that till the day you die. And that's why people still believe that the whole thing was a work, because can you really write a better story than this? The hero gets screwed over in his own country by the big bad villain, Mr. McMahon. And I mean, they leaned right into it. You know, the whole Bret screwed Bret thing is in this documentary. And it's just crazy that they actually didn't write this and it worked out perfectly. Given Bret Hart didn't get to capitalize on it, like I said, but Vince McMahon sure did. He sure took the ball from this whole incident and he ran with it. Again, another thing, like Bret Hart, a lot of people talk about in 2023 as being a bitter man, and I could see it when I watch interviews with him. I could just see the anger in him and the pain, and then I watch this documentary and I get an understanding of why that pain is there, because like all the things that he has, when your morals are betrayed by other people who don't have the same morals as you, like if you are loyal and then you find out your boss isn't loyal to you, yeah, that hurts. When you get screwed over in front of your fans, that hurts. When you put your trust into another man, because Bret Hart's career ended from a kick in the head from Bill Goldberg, and listening to him talk in this documentary about the fact that he takes not hurting the other performer insanely serious, and he expects the same from the person that he's wrestling in the matches. And Goldberg, we all know, is a professional wrestler who was a professional football player, and he kind of just got a rocket attached to him. He doesn't really care about the art of wrestling, which Bret takes super serious. You know, it comes from the Hart Foundation. Stu Hart's his father, you know, the dungeon, you know, that's all in Bret Hart's blood. Wrestling is his passion, his life pretty much. Growing up, that was his passion. And then the irony again of getting kicked in the face by a guy who doesn't care about wrestling, who doesn't care about the safety of the performer. Yeah, I understand why Bret is bitter about all that, and you can kind of get it. It's all here laid out in this documentary. You really get a peek behind the curtain of the person that is Bret Hart. And again, I just think that that's why this documentary is just so fascinating. Plus, it's not put out by WWE, so they can't spin the narrative in their way. It's more just, like I said, it's one side of a divorce. You're just hearing Bret's side. If you want to hear Vince's side, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, that's all on Peacock, on the WWE Network. Believe me, there are plenty of documentaries talking about the Montreal Screwjobs. But if you want to find out a little bit of Bret and his family, it's all right here, and I think it's one of the best documentaries probably ever made, and might be the best wrestling documentary ever made. It's hard to say. Beyond the Mat came out 1 year after this, and those are all, again, not attached to WWE, and I think those are at least give you a fairer look at things. You know, we always say like the winner can always portray it the way they want to portray it. Like that's the thing with that documentary. They do have a narrative to spin, so like this one is geared towards what Bret Hart's thoughts are, and then you can always watch Vince's thoughts somewhere else. But I do recommend you checking out this documentary any which way you choose to check it out. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, it's still very fascinating, and maybe you can get a better understanding of how the world of professional wrestling is and what exactly it is, because I think people just kind of write it off as a soap opera for men, which it is. You know, it's not, that's all there, but I think there is a certain art to it. I've always appreciated wrestling. I was a huge wrestling fan growing up. I'm not into it as much now, but I still keep tabs on it because it was a big part of my life. And this is a documentary that I've seen a bunch of times, and I can highly recommend you check it out. And if you do want to check it out, maybe you want to grab this Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray that we're about to check out. So this is actually very fascinating from Vinegar Syndrome that they put this Blu-ray out. It's, you know, it's a documentary. It doesn't really fit in. They've always kind of been that horror. They put out like low budget films. Last year they started really getting into a little bit bigger budget films, more well-known films like the Amityville Horror, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Roadhouse, which I think is one of the best 4Ks ever. And they put out this, not on 4K, it's on Blu-ray, but they really did a phenomenal job with it. We'll start off right away with the packaging. So Vinegar Syndrome, I've said this a bunch of times here on the channel, they have the best slip covers, the best standard slip covers you could buy. They put a lot of effort into this. It's not just one flat material. It's kind of hard to pick up on the camera, but like the Bret Hart thing is raised, the two hearts next to his name are raised, everything is raised on the side. Here, this is a raised kind of font. It's glossy compared to the matte finish of everything else. You get a little bit of artwork on the back, and the colors, like, I'm a huge fan of this colorway of pink, black, and white. You know, I really think that's one of the coolest things, and I love that the Harts always leaned into that. That was one thing I always appreciated about Bret Hart, was the colorway he would choose for his wrestling singlets. And also the sunglasses. The sunglasses are badass. You know, then you pop it open and peel it out, and there it is, the same artwork underneath. You get all your stats and everything on the back. Clear Blu-ray case, which I do appreciate. I always preferred clear over the blue. You open it up, you get a little bit of paperwork here, which is actually just an interview that you could read. And then you'll notice underneath we got reversible slip art. This looks like the original release of this, the original release poster actually right there behind me. and you can flip it open. I'm going to probably still keep the pink, even though the slipcover is pink. Like I said, I kind of prefer the original Bret Hart pink colors over this. It kind of reminds me, the original colors kind of remind me of like SummerSlam 1997, like the old SummerSlam logo, and it doesn't fit as much with Bret Hart. I prefer the new artwork that Vinegar Syndrome gave us. But you know what? It's your personal choice. So that's what I'm going to go with. I just love that Vinegar Syndrome gave us the option to reverse the sleeve inside there, because I always think that's really cool. And plus, you know, we got individual disc design. You know, Vinegar Syndrome, they know their market. They know who they're catering to. They're catering to the collector. They do just such a good job with their packaging. It really does make you feel important. Like, you know, a lot of these companies will just throw out, especially during the Blu-ray era, they'll throw out some $5 Blu-rays just so you have the movie. But no, they put so much extra effort to making that package look great. You know, I keep all my Vinegar Syndromes together on my shelf because they just look so uniform and so beautiful, and I love to show them off to people, and they just do such a good job with their box design. I really can't sell short how good of a job they did. And now the quality of the film, it's not a 4K, it's a Blu-ray, but a damn good Blu-ray visually. In this, you know, it really looks so clean and crisp. Like, the resolution is very sharp. The colors, it's a much brighter Blu-ray than I remember ever seeing this, given I have seen it in probably some low-quality forms in the past. And they just did such a good job cleaning it up. I mean, it's not their scan from what I was able to find out, but still, this scan is probably the best-looking scan I've ever seen. It's funny because they have the WWF's or WWE Now's footage in there so that they're able to use it. So when you cut between them shooting it and cutting between WWE shooting it, you really do notice the quality increase of this, because like oh my god, it's like when they're shooting at Survivor Series 97, it looks incredible. It looks like you're actually there, and then they cut to WWF's footage, and it's like, oh, okay, there's that dark, warm, kind of like gritty look that I remember watching WWF back in the day. And then when you cut back, you're like, oh wow, man, it's really just like, it really feels like you could jump into your screen. And this is a Blu-ray. Like, I can only imagine what a 4K this would look like, which we'll never get because I don't think there's the audience for it. Although, this was one of the fastest selling out limited editions that Vinegar Syndrome ever sold, because like they sold through the slipcover editions ridiculously fast. I think they only had 1,000. It was incredible. I saw people commenting that the wrestling fans came out for this one. So, you know, maybe now we'll get some more wrestling documentaries from Vinegar Syndrome. You know, you got to speak with your wallet. So if we want more of these, and it's not that highly priced. I think now, because only the standard edition is available, I think it's like $21. And that's pretty much a steal for this, because the visual quality really is incredible. And the audio is really good as well. You're only going to get a DTS 2.0 on here, but I really think they did a pretty damn good job with it. There was moments when we get like pyro on the screen from like, you know, one of the shows, and it really made the bass actually kind of kick in a little bit, and I was pretty surprised. It's only a 2.0 on here, so I didn't expect a lot, but they did a pretty good job cleaning it up. The audio sounds the best it's ever sounded. I mean, it's a documentary, so as long as the audio from the person speaking on screen is crisp and clear, no clicks, no hiss, as long as all that is eliminated, we're good, and they did a great job with that, so definitely no issues with the audio. Now, what surprised me is the extras. There is quite a few extras on here. Some new interviews for 2022 when they recorded them. They have some archival interviews from 2008, which is actually the time when Vince and Bret made up, so that's pretty cool that it actually worked out in that same year, because Bret won the Hall of Fame during WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. So that's pretty cool. They have those interviews on here. They got an audio commentary track. And then they have a 46-minute documentary about the life and death of Owen Hart on here also. So you also get not just this documentary, you get that documentary on here also, which is really cool because Owen Hart is one of the greatest tragedies in the history of wrestling. And, you know, brother of Bret Hart, this movie came out in 98, and in December, Owens tragically passed away in May of 1999 at Over the Edge. So they kind of just missed that. It's just incredible, again, that they got all this on camera. You know, it's just one of those things that they just lucked into, and it's just unbelievable. And to have it all on film, and now we get this beautiful Vinegar Syndrome release. I really can't sell short how happy I am. The price is definitely perfect, like $22 for this, with all those extras, the high quality increase, the great packaging. I really do think that this is actually a steal. And if you're a fan of wrestling and you're a fan of Bret Hart, you're going to be eating good this weekend because you're going to be really happy with it. What would I give this entire package on a score out of 10? Well, I love the documentary. I love the visual increase. The audio is good. The extras are amazing. The packaging is phenomenal. So overall, I'm going to give this a really solid 9.5 out of 10. I'm very happy with my purchase. And if you haven't grabbed this one yet and they haven't sold out, I highly recommend you do, because I think you're going to be just as happy with this purchase as I was. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here on another episode of Let's Talk With Me. Nothing helps this channel out more than by you liking this video, subscribing to the channel, searching for us on all podcast services, giving us a 5-star rating there, subscribing to us, and then after you're done doing all that, I want you to throw on your Bret Hart sunglasses head out into those streets and tell all your friends about us.